All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, aka Wazzy Lambre, and I'm joined back from parts unknown, y'all. This man has been all around the world since the last time he was here. Last time I saw him, he was in Amsterdam. We were in Amsterdam together, having a fantastic dinner. My boy Nando Vila, what's up, man? Welcome back.
It's just good to be back in Trump's America, dude. We 4 years, 4 years.
4 years too long, man. I'm
Yeah,
fired up for
we missed
America,
him.
y'all.
Yeah, we
We
missed
we
him.
needed
We missed
this
him.
like we needed a hole in our head.
Yeah.
But man, what I will say, and I said this on Dr. Richie's show this morning, the bad news is that Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party got smoked. Absolutely, thoroughly, unequivocally smoked. That is the bad and troubling
Yeah.
news. But the good news is also that they got smoked unequivocally,
Yeah.
like convincingly smoked. And because we've been paying attention for the past few weeks, whether it's like it's going to be black people or, young men, because, Trump is appealing to the bros, the barstool Republicans, and, blah, blah, blah. Like they were going to come up with people to blame, but the defeat was so thorough across the board. Like I know you've seen that graph by now of the demographics that Trump improved his performance from 2020. It's just across the board. I know Latinos is the number one with a bullet, of course, because they are by far the largest minority group, and they are the group that the entire demographics is destiny credo of the establishment Democratic Party after the two Barack Obama elections was built on. Like they're the foundation of that. It's like, yeah, the tanning, the browning of America, and these brown people are gonna have no choice but to vote for
Yeah.
Democrats from now and forever because Latino people, which again, guys, we're gonna get into a lot of stuff today, but like we've said this so many times on the show, like I don't know why people should think that a Mexican in East LA or Boyle Heights is the exact same as a Puerto Rican in the Bronx, who should be the exact same as a Cuban in Miami. Like
Or as a
this,
black guy in Alabama and a South Asian dude in San Francisco.
it just doesn't. It never made any sense that we would treat not all non-whites as this monolith, and just take their vote for granted, and that no matter what, no matter how freaking neoliberal, cynical as hell this party wanted to get, that these people would just love on the Democratic Party forever and ever. And yeah, man, last night is a repudiation of that. Like it's hard because I feel conflicted. Like, obviously, I didn't want Trump to win. Like, this shit sucks.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
But like seeing these people lose is nice. It's nice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're right that outside of just like a democratic victory, which again I preferred and I wanted, the second best possible outcome is a total Republican
Yes.
victory, um, because it clarifies a lot of things, and it should clarify a lot of things and leave things out of doubt, which is that the iteration of the Democratic Party that started in Obama's second term, continued through Hillary, continued in the quote unquote resistance of Trump's first term, and more or less continued with Biden onto Kamala is a completely washed and discredited
You're
political
done.
project.
You're done. Your neoliberalism stuff of basically privatize the hell out of everything, meaning no government services or goods, just make that a
Yeah.
private good and have taxpayers pay for it. Like this is these are the freaking ideas, right?
Yeah.
Prioritize capital over literally any other consideration whatsoever. Like this idea that like, yo, as long as money is growing, and GDP growth is happening. It doesn't matter what kind of wages these people are having or the living conditions. Like, all we care about is GDP growth that not
In
everybody
the
gets
stock
to
market.
enjoy. Yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, and pair that, of course, with, you know, the ostensibly socially liberal stuff, a socially liberal democratic democracy, blah, 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 blah. Right?
Which
Like,
they
you
can't
know,
even, but they can't even deliver on, you know, because they overturned
right,
Roe.
right.
Like the cornerstone of any socially liberal, like literally the foundation of, you know, the whole, like, I'm a social liberal, like abortion
Yeah.
and women's rights to choose, a woman's right to choose is the absolute
The nest
centerpiece
egg.
of that.
Yeah.
And they fumbled that one in the last decade or so of American politics. um, I think it's worth reminding people, because people forget the Obama campaigns in 2008 and 2012.
Yes, please.
Obama won the white working class, straight up.
Just
The
think
black
about
guy from
so
Harvard.
and the reason why it's important you say that, Nando, is because, and we're gonna play some clips about racism. Did it? These same people voted for
Yeah,
Barry. They
yeah,
voted for Barry, and his message was not, you guys are deeply flawed, racist pieces of shit, and therefore you
no,
should vote for me because I'm God reincarnated, sent from heaven to save your ass from your racist, you know, hellish, feverish selves. It's like, nah, like the Iraq war was BS, right? We need to stop forever wars. We need to get you universal health care. We need the banks to pay, you know, for what they did to the economy and homeowners and you know, the housing crash. Like, it was populist. It was like, yo,
yeah,
we want to change the paradigm. We want to change the ruling order. And you know, all of those lessons, of course, Barack Obama, the incredible mandate, squandered
yeah.
all of that. But that
He
was
didn't
his
deliver.
message.
That was the message. He didn't deliver, which is part of the problem for the Democrats,
Mhm.
is that they ran and won on that, and
People
then he didn't
remember.
deliver, and people remember. And then, you know, starting around 2014, 2015, there was this kind of transformation in liberal culture. And it's always funny to see TV shows and movies from like kind of before that era, because they always
Mhm.
feel so different, because there was a transformation around that time that really kind of explicitly started vilifying white men and men in general, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
as like kind of suspects.
Men are the problem.
And men are a problem, and like, you know, there was like the ironic hashtag, like hashtag not all men, and all that stuff. And it's like, you know, at a certain point, that
Forgot about
message is
hashtag not
like, a
all.
bunch of guys are gonna be like, you know what, like,
This
fuck
is
you guys,
bullshit.
you know,
Yeah.
like, I didn't do anything, you know.
Yeah.
Like, if you just lump everyone together and create this kind of climate of hostility, um you shouldn't be surprised when a Barstool Sports comes around, or a Joe Rogan comes around, and he's like, you know what, men are cool, and you guys should just like hang out with your friends and have a good time and listen and watch funny comedians, and don't listen to these people. Oh, and by the way, vote for Trump, but don't listen to these people. You know, that I think is such a powerful, it's been, we've talked about it on the show a million times, but it's the backlash has been brewing for years, and it's obvious
Mhm.
to anyone who's out in the world at all that there was a backlash to all of that stuff. The the sort of tokenization of race, the lumping together of different minority groups into this one mass, when they don't like to see them, like they don't want to be associated necessarily as this kind of flat thing, that they all believe the same things, the same kind of liberal pieties that elite, you know, university educated people do. And so when you talk about like Latinos, you know, being lumped into one political coalition, meaning like this quote unquote the Latino vote, which, you know, again, like you said, a Mexican from East
That's not a
LA and a
thing. It's not
Venezuelan from
real.
Miami and whatever could, but writ large, there was this lumping together of something called, a term called POC, people of
Mm.
color, as a
BIPOC.
as a BIPOC, as a broad category of people. And what that does is like flatten any sort of distinctions, flatten any discussions, and tokenize these people in a way that there's gonna be a backlash. And you saw it like pretty dramatically in this election with the quote unquote Latino vote, especially Latino men
Mm-hmm.
who broke hard for Trump. And you saw it especially with men under the age of 30, you know, like the kind of Zen addicted, YouTube addicted guys who, you know, love to watch, you know, epic golf cart videos and, you know what I mean? Like those guys like broke hard for Trump. And
Yeah.
again, it's hard to blame them when the previous generation, you know, the millennial generation, the media dominated by that generation was so hostile toward them. Like,
Oh
where
man, it
were they
was
supposed
so
to
bad.
go?
No, they were just
So,
supposed to realize just that they were devils themselves and fall at the feet of freaking Hillary Clinton and the rest of the Democratic Party establishment. Um, Man, it's important to go back, right? Like it's important to go back because all of this stuff has historical context. And to a certain extent, I can't blame the libs coming
yeah,
off of those two Barack Obama elections because he creamed John McCain, kicked
yeah,
his ass. Then he
yeah,
destroyed Mitt Romney. Like and so this idea that like the liberal elite order was ascendant and could never be supplanted. Like you kind of get it because it seemed impossible that they could have elected this guy in the first place back in '07 and '08. And then the fact that he won twice, it like bred this overconfidence, right? And this idea that like, you know, these master's degree having consultants were actually the rulers of the universe and everybody would fall in line with them because they're so smart and so cool and so cosmopolitan. And like you can understand it. And you know, like some of the stuff with BLM and the Me Too movement, like all of these liberal social movements, like again, like I'm not saying this stuff was meritless, absolutely
yeah,
not. But like there were overreaches. There's just no like I don't know how you can look back at it
yeah,
and not say a lot of the canceling and the hand wringing. There were some overreaches, right? Again, not to say that like you know, women should have to give Harvey Weinstein a blowjob to get a freaking job in Hollywood. Obviously, everybody knows that's criminal and ridiculous. But to map that onto the entire United States of America, you
yeah,
know, this idea that Me Too could be mapped onto everybody, you know, like a freaking bus driver, a mechanic or something, because they're also men. It just never really tracked, right?
yeah,
And they doubled down on that thing. And you know, and I want to give a shout out to Ryan Grimm because he's, you know, he's one of the goats. He's one of the good ones.
yeah. Glad.
And he put a book out about the squad, and a huge emphasis on that book, as you know, Nando, is about Bernie's 2016 candidate. I can hear the limbs right now. Oh, here go these Bernie crats again. They just want to gloat. They got their asses kicked. We don't want to. No. We got to get back to 2016 because y'all just got smoked. So it's time for y'all to hear
Yeah.
some truth. We got to go
Well,
back to 2016 where Bernie comes out with this, you know, this just populist left agenda. Here are the people who are the problems, you know, the 1%, the millionaires and the billionaires. Here's what we need to do. We need to redistribute the resources so that you can have health care, people can go to college for free, raise the minimum wage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Hillary Clinton could see that there was some actual energy behind it from her left. So how could she position herself as to the left? These people are class reductionists, sexist, racist, who don't care about
bros,
race.
the
They're
bros,
bros. They're
the
bros.
bros,
And that
the
was it.
bros. Yeah, and it's really funny because one of the kings of the Democratic Party, or one of the high princes of the Democratic Party, is a guy named James Carville. We all know James
Oh,
Carville, the
yeah.
Raging Cajun, the architect of Bill Clinton's victory in 1992, where he had the famous slogan, which is not wrong, by the way. That is, it's the economy, stupid, right? That was Bill
Mhm.
Clinton's campaign in 1992, was hyper focused on the economy. Did not want to talk about. I mean, this was the at least their internal logic. That's not actually true in practice, but there was some truth to that he was hyper focused on an economic message. And the famous quote that Bill Clinton had on his campaign, which again in the country, it's not a very well known recession, or it's not really well remembered, but there was a little mini recession in the early 90s, which is what killed H.W. Bush. But Bill Clinton's famous line, the most famous line in the campaign was, I feel your pain, you know, and that was his message to the voters,
Yeah.
and he won. And the number one rule in almost any political context is that people want a candidate who they can wrap their arms around, the idea that they're going to improve their economic security first and foremost, and their economic prospects secondly. And I saw like a very interesting stat in the last few weeks. I was just reading an article about something else, and they pointed out the survey data that showed that something like 92% of Americans, like an overwhelming, like almost everyone, essentially 92% is might as well be everyone, of Americans would trade financial security for upward mobility, which makes sense in an era of
Mm.
precarity, right? When everyone's like kind of on gig jobs, there's no job security, there's no unionization, you know, you can get fired for anything. That they would just trade like the ability to just kind of like a stable economic existence over the promise of upward mobility, right? Like if those two things are in tension,
Mm.
they'd rather economic security. And this is something that the Democrats just never run on. You know, they run on opportunity. Like Kamala Harris's famous, or now probably infamous, appeal to black men, which was like, "We'll give you like a low interest loan up to $20,000 so that you can start your own like little
God.
crypto weed business or whatever bullshit." Like it was comical what it was, but it's like this idea of creating more opportunities for upward mobility. People realize that that's bullshit because they haven't seen any of that shit work in America for decades now. They'll
Hmm.
trade all that shit, the low interest loans to start your own crypto or whatever, for give me a stable job that pays okay, and I don't have to really worry about getting fired and being destitute and on the street,
All
and not
day.
being able to provide healthcare for my family. Like they would trade those things in a second. And that's something that the Democrats cannot run on. And they cannot run on it
No.
because of the coalition that they've built since Obama. Since Obama famously won the white working class two times, the black man won the white working class two times. The Democrats, starting with Hillary, and the famous Chuck Schumer line, which will go down in history as one of the one of the grimmest political calculations ever. That also just happens to be incorrect, which is that for every working class voter we lose in rural Ohio, we'll make
We'll
up
pick
for
up
one in the
two.
suburbs of Philadelphia, or pick up two in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Turns out that didn't work
Mm.
because you keep losing, and you almost lost in 2020, a race that should have been a blowout given the conditions on the ground. So it's just very grim that this is the political coalition that has been built. The only kind of quote unquote hope we could have is that this was such a total defeat and such a repudiation that that strategy needs to be abandoned forever, and they need to appeal to working class voters once again to build a coalition that actually can deliver on redistribution, can deliver on job security, can deliver on healthcare security and things like that. And that's just the long and the short of it. And until that happens, we're going to be stuck in a very nightmare scenario of politics in which like uh, 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 an insane right wing just keeps winning elections.
Yeah, man, just the utter rejection, the stone cold rejection of this identity politics thing. Um, this idea that Latinos, in so much as that could even be used to accurately describe a group of people, or black people, or Asian people, or whoever, are going to see themselves first and foremost as their race in every single scenario possible. I think people, and we talked about this before, I think people are taught to think of themselves that way, especially in elite institutions, man. This whole intersectional, all of this
It's a way.
mumbo
It's a way
jumbo.
for advancement in those institutions. It is at this point. It is.
100%. 100%. I mean, like people who work in academia, like if you look at it's like they'll put a job post and be like, yo, if you're indigenous, you're more likely to get the job. Like they're so identitarian in their focus.
Talk to anyone in the book publishing industry. They'll joke about it. They'll say it openly. Like, if you're a white man, you're not going to get your book published. Like a new author, like they grandfathered in, someone from the previous
Of
era.
course.
They can still get there, but like a new one who's just like, hey, I'm a white man. I have a book about whatever the fuck.
And that's
like,
not to say, whoa, me about, whatever, about white men, saying that this is ruining white men's lives. No, it's to talk about an ethos of a cohort of people, the elites in these cultural institutions, meaning higher education, Hollywood, the publishing industry, the freaking editorial board at the New York Times, New Yorker. They're all the same. And they all been pushing this religion on identity, and people don't care. Yes, look, I gotta be frank. When I went on my Facebook, my Instagram this morning, my black white collar cohort, man, whoo, Lord have mercy, the walls is closing in. I mean, people just desperate, like, oh my God, they did this, they did that. And I think a lot of it, man, it's like this analysis of, like, I see black women, people who I think are really smart, brilliant people, on my social media. They're like, oh, they just hate black women so much. I'm just like, guys, like, that's a very navel-gazing analysis. Think that the reason why somebody wouldn't want to vote for the Democratic Party to remain in rule is because they hate black women specifically. I just don't see how that can be the complete analysis. That's not to say that there aren't people in the country. I don't think that's not to say it's not harder to nominate and win a campaign when you're a woman. I'm not saying it's harder. It's not harder than it might generally otherwise be, but the degree by which it's harder, I think, is more so influenced by the shit that Democrats do while they're in office and the people who they ultimately serve. I just think that analysis is toxic. It's not good enough.
Well, I mean, and it obviates like a million. I mean, the big question, which is the economy, right? And I think it's fair to say that the post-COVID inflation, which happened under Biden's presidency, right, not through his fault necessarily, but inflation is a nasty thing to deal with for any president, or any government anywhere in the world. I mean, you've seen voters reject incumbent nominees or candidates in this era of kind of post-COVID inflation all over the world. I mean, it's been very difficult for the incumbent to win. So there was definitely headwinds there. And again, inflation is just a nasty thing for people to deal with. I mean, when you go to the grocery store and a fucking, bar of soap is like $5, and, you go out to lunch with your friends and you're dropping like $50 a head for whatever, it becomes a very, very powerful, indicator of how the economy's health is doing. So there was certainly that. There was also just a million kind of self-inflicted wounds that the Biden administration did to kill their credibility in a re-election campaign, starting with the war in Gaza, which obviously they didn't launch, but they supported in the kind of worst possible way from a political standpoint, outside of the moral questions of the awfulness of the carnage there. From a pure political standpoint, there is like very little political gain to supporting a foreign government's war against another country in a way that makes you look weak. Like there's the
all the bad, none of the good.
Exactly. Like, if you're gonna do that, at least project strength.
Yeah, like, we wholly believe in everything they're doing. We're so down with it. We got to keep doing it because we're the strongest nation ever. Blah 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 blah. That's gonna play better than the mealy mouth. Like, what
I really hope they would. I really wish they would just stop doing.
I wish BB would just grow up and stop.
Yeah. It just makes you look weak. It's the worst possible. The last thing that people want in their president is someone who looks weak, And Kamala, like Joe Biden, already looked weak as the freaking head of the party. His vice president, who's not exactly like a personality and charisma dynamo, and by the way, never dared to break with Joe Biden on anything. Famously, she was asked in the town hall, what would you do? What would you have done differently than
Couldn't
Joe
think of
on
a single
anything?
thing.
Open-ended question. And she said, I can't think of a single thing. You know, that makes you look weak. And so
It's terrible.
there was the obviously the war in Gaza, which I think was a huge drag on the Democrats because it is a slap in the face to their base. You know, the young voters, minority voters, like Arab Americans in crucial swing states, and their tone in talking about it was like, you need to grow up and shut up and vote for us. I mean, the clip of Bill Clinton in Michigan talking to Arab
Oh
American
my
voters
God.
is absolutely horrifying. The
Yep.
level of contempt and condescension that he had toward those people is just, it should be studied. And then the other really, really nasty thing that the administration had to deal with is a wave of immigration, which no one fucking likes anywhere in the world. This is
Yep.
true. This is not a uniquely American thing. Look at the politics of Europe. Every single fucking country there is being politically dominated by the discussions around immigration, and they're all voting in the right wing to stop it. That's like what they're all doing. So this is not something that's unique to the United States, but it was something that was abetted so strongly by the Biden administration. Namely, because if you look at where the immigrants were coming from in the last few years, a huge chunk of them were coming from Venezuela, right? A country where we're waging absolute economic
Economic
warfare on,
warfare. Yeah.
and we're causing the migrant crisis. You know, instead of sanctioning Venezuela because Maduro bad, you know, obviously not a great guy, don't love Maduro, doesn't need to be defended. But from a purely political standpoint, you do not lose points for doing little quiet deals with Maduro. No one gives a shit. I
Nobody
promise you.
cares. Yeah.
If you shore up their economy and keep their people there, no one gives a shit. You'll get some fucking psychos in Miami yelling at you, but you know, that's it. And really, like, if you look at that, countries like Honduras, like Central America, where the United States is like supporting right wing authoritarians all over the place, like that's where the migrants are coming from, and it was a totally self inflicted wound. And it's funny because I was watching a little bit of Elon Musk on Joe Rogan right before the election, and it's like absolutely insane to hear him say things like, you know, the Democrats, they're deliberately letting in millions of immigrants because they want to create a permanent Democratic majority. And I'm like, no, you actually have it exactly backwards. The best way to create a conservative majority is to
Is
allow
to let
immigrants
a
into the
bunch of
country, because
yes.
people fucking hate immigrants. They always have, again, everywhere in the world. You know, and me, I'm a supporter of immigration. It horrifies me to see that, but that's just the cold, hard reality. Is that the best way to move people to the right is by increasing immigration. So when the Biden administration, their immigration tactic was just, let's try to pass the right wing border bill, completely conceding the debate to the Republicans and using the Trump framing on immigration, that was just fucking disastrous. It was just
Yep.
disastrous on every level.
And so I think that people seem to make the mistake that voters aren't making a causal argument when they say they care about the economy and immigration at the same time. Voters are saying, like, if we let all these new people in, and to us, it feels like our government has very scarce resources. They're like, why do these new people deserve any of
Yeah.
our resources if they're so scarce? If we can't get these fools to do anything for us, how in the hell is it okay for us to divert resources to migrant housing and healthcare, et cetera, putting the migrants' kids through school, et cetera? Like, voters are like, they're not complete frothing at the mouth, racist people that want to string up immigrants and just kill them or whatever. It's like they're making a causal argument in their brain, like, bro, if our resources are scarce, which is what our government constantly tells us, why are they doing this? Why are they allowing this? If our resources are scarce, why can't we send 100 billion to Israel to fight their war? Why does Ukraine get another 150, 200 billion to fight their war? Like, they're like,
do you know what
it's not
those
rocket
400, that's like
science.
$400 billion? Like, do you know what that does to locally? You know, like, do you know what that buys you? Like, just it's incredible to think
Insane.
about, like, just how quickly the national security state can just sign away those checks, and that, like, anything to the local population has to be litigated to fucking death. I mean, it's crazy.
So we say all of these things, right, Nando? And you know, the next conversation obviously is like they should learn the lesson of the loss that was the brutal loss that was dealt with them. But let's just again, I wake up in the morning, man, just for shits and giggles. I open up my New York Times app, boy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The freaking New York Times editorial board, Lord have mercy, the bedwetting and couch fainting and like, God, good golly almighty, America has made a deep and grave mistake. And oh, this is a dark period in America. And I'm just like, yo, there's no analysis about why people might feel this way. It's just a demonization of the people. And again, in case you're wondering, if the elite media and the elite agenda setting class have learned their lessons, let's play this clip from MSNBC. Hold on, Jerv. Let me share this for y'all, man. I gotta play this because this was making the rounds and it really deserved the love that it got, man. Just 1 second here, dude. Let me just get my screen situated. But yeah, Joan Reed,
Friend of the show.
she's friend of the show. One
Former
of the
Miami
great.
Herald columnist, where she published a bunch of homophobic columns and blogs, and then claimed it was a Russian hack, even though it
One
was
of the greats.
yeah, one of the greats.
Joyan Reed, her reaction to Kamala's resounding defeat. Here we go, Jerv.
To say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. She had Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out, she had every prominent
Queen
celebrity
Latifah?
voice. She had the Taylor Swift, she had the Swifties, she had the Beehive.
Ooh.
Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true. And I
Oh.
The Democrats can never fail. They can only be failed. That is can you believe Queen Latifah? Queen Latifah. The kids on these streets, they're just I see people come up to me on the streets being like, Nando, please, who is Queen Latifah voting for? Whoever she votes for.
Never endorsed anybody.
It's historic.
Queen Latifah, where's Ja?
Dude. Okay. It's one of the best clips of all time. Like, that is just Democrat brain. That's the pure uncut shit straight into my veins. Like that. I'm gonna nod off.
God.
Like in a heroin days.
You can't be serious. You can't be serious.
I can't believe she said that with a straight face. Like, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't something designed.
How could the Democrats have lost? Beyonce and Taylor Swift said they should win.
Yeah.
And Queen Latifah?
Dude. She's never endorsed.
People watching Just Right at home with her and Common, where Common was a terrible player for the New York Nets or the New Jersey Nets, and she was his wife. They watched that at the crib and was like, no, not Latifa.
This idea, by the way, that America is just too misogynist to elect a woman is kind of funny to me, because think about the following thing that I will posit. One of the truisms that you hear a lot is that the Latino male vote broke for Trump because, like, Latinos are very macho. Machismo. Yeah, they got the machismo. They were just like, they're hot-blooded Latin blood. Is just full of machismo. They have the machismo inside of them. And You know, also Latinos. The other thing you see is that they're very Catholic. They're very conservative because of their how Catholic and how, you know, how much they believe in God and
Don't say
whatever. And
that damn conservative. People always throw that shit around. It's not
well,
true.
so hear me out. So you know, these two things are obviously like a truism. You know who just elected a woman president who also happens to
Leftists.
be Jewish?
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah,
Fucking
there you go.
Mexico just overwhelming majorities, won every single state, won the city of Mexico City. Her with her at the top of the party, just the hot-blooded Mexican machistas voted in a Jewish woman as they were like kneeling to Christ on the altar. They said, please, please, give me the Jewish woman.
She's Jewish and
Claudia
woman.
Scheinbaum. Yeah. Like, get the fuck out of here. It's just such a
Yeah,
stupid and facile
it's
analysis,
and
you
by the way,
know?
she came in on the back of her predecessor, who again they had delivered. So she could run on that party, which was very popular. The party's popular because they delivered for folks.
The
You
largest
know,
increase in living standards for the working class in Mexico ever.
so she was able to come in and win on the backs of those victories. And like, let's face it, guys, like the Republicans are not like overwhelmingly popular. Like Donald Trump outran every single Republican damn near in every state that ran with him. Like he outperformed all other Republicans.
Yeah.
So it's not as if the Republicans at large are just so popular. They're not.
Tammy Baldwin, a lesbian, okay, won re-election in Ohio, in a state in Wisconsin, in a state that Kamala lost.
Yes.
So those
Like,
Ohio voters that, you know, ticket
yeah,
split, right? They voted for Trump or didn't vote for Kamala and voted for Tammy, the lesbian woman who's for Medicare for all and stuff like that. Like, what happened there? What's the explanation there? What is literally what is the explanation there?
hold on. I'm about to give you the explanation.
You have to give it to me.
I'm
Can't wait.
about to give you the explanation because the ladies at the View had the explanation lined up for that ass.
Oh yeah.
And let me just observe. I'm lining this up because Nando got to learn what the explanation is. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's your explanation, Nando. Jer, fire me up, please.
I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum, cultural resentment in this country.
Well, I think it.
Round of applause. Round of applause.
Had nothing to do
Round of
with
applause.
policy, you know. It just those things don't matter. I mean, I put on my Instagram story the, you know, freezing cold takes from before the election. It's some guy who published like 2 months ago, like, you know, Kamala actually doesn't need to be specific on policy because it can hurt her more than it can help her. And again, there's this feeling like the Democratic Party is has so much consultant brain pouring out of them that they have this idea, and it's really largely driven by this one guy, fucking David Shore, this fucking asshole, you know, the guy who invented this idea of populism, where it's like you just pull all the issues, and then it's kind of like a money ball for politics, you know, like you pull all the issues, and then you just design a candidate instead of having a candidate that has convictions and that feel true, even if like the specific policy may be anathema to a certain type of person, you know, like if they actually defend it and believe it, people will respect that in some deep well. It's someone who's just like, well, I'm a weather vane, you know, like Kamala in 2020 was for Medicare for all. When she was
Which way am I gonna go, y'all? Y'all can't catch me.
She can't even. Yeah, exactly. It's like people just know that they're just completely empty vessels, and so like you can't just like put little policy issues in through a computer and spit it out, you know, like the result, and design a candidate that way. You need an actual human pulse. You need an actual human being. And it's a huge source of Trump's appeal. And we've always talked about this. It's a huge, huge source of his appeal and you hear it all the time from people out on these streets. he doesn't sound like a politician. What does
Yes.
that mean? It means that he, in his own weird way, I mean, no one really sounds like Trump, but they can tell that he just isn't focus group
It's
to death. He's not a
from
corporate
his
consultant.
freaking gut. Like what he's saying
Yeah,
is coming from inside of him and not from outside of him. Like
yeah,
that's what people are intuiting there. And guess what, y'all? The things that Donald Trump basically is selling to the people that are cool with voting for him. And again, oh, he's a felon. He's this. Like, I get it. That shit is whack. Like, I'm not disputing that. But what people will say, and I think quite logically, like people think there's some illogical, nature to the Trump voter. What people will say quite logically is like, yes, Joe Biden don't got none of that. Joe Biden says mostly the right stuff, never been convicted, blah, blah. What did that do for me personally? What did it actually do for me? What did Barry's Harvard ass actually do for me? His decorum and his self-dignity and his eloquent language and words. Like, what did it actually do? So you can't sell me that as a selling point above somebody else who doesn't have that, because we can make the one-to-one. Like, it didn't feel much better when you guys were around for me. And so people can say, like, look, the idea of a mass, like, this is what these guys are selling: mass deportation. So rounding a bunch of people up, mass deportation, closing the border, bunch of tariffs, extending the super rich people tax credit, deregulating the shit out of everything. Elon in there, they would say that little unionization y'all was talking about with my Tesla plans, that's done.
That's gone. It's gone.
Union busting the shit, but like, these are things that the motherfucker believes in. And if you really deep inside your bones are like, yo, bro, we can't keep wasting money, resources, and, allowing people to come into our country and reshaping our neighborhoods and doing shit that we don't like. And that's what I'm passionate about. Then that's what they're going to do. All of this other stuff about Trump and his court cases and his scamming and his weird nature, like, nobody cares.
It doesn't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to a voter's struggles in their lives, right? It only matters to people who are addicted to politics as a TV show, which is not an insignificant amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
But to regular people, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. There's a feeling that most regular people think all politicians are crooks. This is like not even controversial once you say that out loud. Like, they think they're all crooks and liars. Okay.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, like, pointing out that he's just like a little bit more or got caught or whatever, like, is not a meaningfully different thing. And then, like, I can't get over the Democratic obsession with designing an entire campaign around democracy is on the ballot when that is just such an esoteric thing. Obviously, like, I'm a supporter of democracy. Like, blah, I get it. Like, I don't think democracy needs to be defended. But to run a campaign off of that, Trump is a fascist. I mean, when the John Kelly news came out, that John Kelly, in a private meeting, I think this was in the Bob Woodward book, in a private meeting, it described Trump talking about, like, the Hitler's generals, and that John Kelly, this, like, general, and who gives a fuck, thinks Trump is a fascist. And then Kamala calls a fucking press conference about it, and then she goes on the CNN town hall with Anderson Cooper, and he asks her a question about Dobbs and abortion, and she starts talking about how Trump is a fascist. Like, it drives me crazy, because today, when Kamala finally faced the music and conceded, which, by the way, I was just horrified that she didn't do it last night. I mean, I thought it was just so cowardly. And anyway, that she goes and she's like, I spoke. I'm paraphrasing here, and she says, I spoke to President Trump earlier, and I told him that my team would be in full collaboration with his team to
what happened to fascism? The end of democracy.
Yeah. So you're now a fascist collaborator. Like the good old fashioned fascist. I think we have the clip here. Play it, Jerm.
But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition. and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
Okay. Well done. Okay. The referee in the sky that doesn't exist gives you great brownie points for that one, Kamala. But the only thing that I hear is a version of the kids in cages when people were crying about the kids in cages, which is horrifying. Of course, it's horrifying. I find it morally abhorrent that I live in a country that does that kind of shit. But then as soon as the Democrats get in power, the kids in cages remain. There's going to be kids in cages. They don't give a shit anymore.
Everybody knows this.
And everybody knows this. So like when they're crying about the fucking fascists coming, and then they're like, you know what? We're just going to roll out the red carpet. I'm not suggesting the Democrats should overturn the results of the election. I'm just saying what that does is it tells people I am full of shit. I don't actually believe anything that I'm saying. I don't actually believe these things because you don't. You don't actually believe Trump is a fascist.
This is the last election of our lifetimes, Nando.
Yeah. How many times did you hear that this cycle?
According to these people, this is the election for our lives. Blah, 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 blah. It's just crazy. Look, and I do want to say this, 45 minutes into killing the Dems, and Kamala and them, I don't know that she could have ran a campaign that would have won. Joe Biden, aside from maybe, completely doing what they just would never do. I repudiate this dude. I don't know why he hasn't resigned yet. I'm not with Joe Biden. I would do
ran a primary. I would do things completely different than his old ass. Throw him under the bus. Maybe if she would have did that, but save for that, like if you're gonna just be a quote unquote team player, and she couldn't run away from Biden's agenda and his reign, dude's deeply unpopular. His presidency has been deeply unpopular. Like I don't know that she could have ran a campaign that would have won. Not when you lose 7 quote unquote swing states or 6, or whatever the hell it was. Got swept.
Like you got smoked.
Lost all of them.
It's insane.
It's not Kamala's fault that she was born with like negative charisma, obviously she was kind of put in an impossible position, and she was just anointed and coronated by the party bosses. Never, if she would have run a primary, I'm convinced she would have lost, because like the last time we saw her run in a primary, she got absolutely smoked. She horrible. Like she dropped out before Iowa because she was going to get fucking less than 5% in her home state of California. And it was getting smoked by like Amy Klobuchar, was out charismaing her.
There was moments in the Anderson Cooper talk, the Charlemagne talk, with like basic, like little tight, light pushbacks. She would just trip and fall over her face. Being scared to go on Rogan was just like, come on. Give me a break. Like, you should be like, you freaking prosecutor, bruh.
Yeah.
Like, you telling me you can't go toe-to-toe with Joe Rogan? He's honestly like some credited powering mental gymnast. Like what?
Credit to JD Vance, who I fucking despise, obviously, but credit to him for he's not afraid to go on wherever. He'll talk to anyone.
He's not scared of his own fucking shadow in public. Like, and again, look, this podcast has many problems with Barack Obama. He would have went on Joe Rogan and had that motherfucker eating out the palm of his hand. What?
Yeah.
Shit, Rogan fucking endorsed Bernie.
Yeah.
Like it's nuts.
Because Bernie went on there and won him over. Bernie went on there.
I think, they could have at least.
And by the way, do you remember? Speaking of Bernie on Rogan, I will never. This was like something that I will never forgive certain people in the liberal establishment. When Bernie went on Rogan, it was seen as evidence that he's a racist.
He's a racist. He's a Klansman.
AOC almost pulled her endorsement of Bernie.
Yeah. He's a Klansman
because he went on Rogan, and it's like, guys, what are you talking? This is politics. Like, what are you talking about? This is the most popular
idea that you shouldn't be going to sell your ideas and your wares is crazy to me. It's absolutely nuts. And the fact that they should at least let Tim Walz go up there. I think Tim Walz would have been a great Rogan guest because this guy actually believed in the policies that he passed in Minnesota. Like it's deeply felt. His belief in, paid family leave and all this other stuff that he did, feeding the goddamn school children. Like he would have went up there and been like, this is what we want to do, and here's why. And here's how it's gonna work. But Kamala, like her whole afraid of her own shadow is just like, whoo, good golly almighty. And yeah, the Dems lost the damn House, smoked in the Senate. Trump's gonna
lost the popular vote.
Lost the popular
I want
vote.
people to
First time
understand.
since 2004.
Since 1992, when Bill Clinton won the popular vote, Dems have won the popular vote in 1992, 1996, 2000. They lost it in 2004. They won it again in 2008. They won it again in 2012. They won it again in 2016. And they won it again in 2020. This is like only the second time they've lost the popular vote since 1992.
Yeah.
It's utterly bananas. It's really just...
And we can end on this because I think it speaks to the mission of I guess our project up here and what we're trying to get folks to understand. I know the COVID moment was a special moment, but I think the context matters when we talk about that turnout, because people came out to vote because one, the COVID lockdown was induced by our government. So the role that our government was playing in our daily lives was so very readily understood. This shit is it was an active participant in every single American's life. And so that's a one. And then two, remember, if you guys remember, them damn checks were on the ballot.
The checks were nice.
The checks in Georgia that got Warnock up in there.
Yeah, and Ossoff.
And Ossoff up in there. The checks were on the ballot. The government and its function were on the ballot. And yes, I get it. People were more engaged. They were home. They were more paying attention to this. But I truly do believe that the fact that the government was playing such a major role in everyone's everyday lives drove a crazy turnout. The fact that this turnout was just so putrid after that, this is it, guys. This is the game.
Been a shadow. It's been an absent administration. So you go back to the COVID days. The other interesting thing about COVID, I mean, obviously the checks were on the ballot, and like you said, government was involved in people's lives in a way that they're just not used to in America, other than just harassing them for fucking fees or the cops.
Bro, I just got the goddamn California car registration in the mail. I was like, God damn, they even tacked on. Part of my registration, they tacked on a freaking parking ticket I ain't paying in West Hollywood. I was like, God damn.
So the government was involved in people's lives, healthcare and actual checks in people's hands and things like that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that these governors, a lot of them, and this was bipartisan, by the way, it didn't matter whether they were Democrat or Republican. The governors who were on TV all the time, doing a version of what Andrew Cuomo was doing, if you remember,
Cuomo
just being
was
on
every
TV and being like,
zaddy.
this is what we're doing.
Cuomo was 2024 ready, according to people.
Yeah, he was. And so but even if the state's governor was Republican or Democrat or whatever, and they were just on TV all the time, looking like they were in charge of the situation and just being like, okay, this is where we're going. We're deploying the people here. We're doing the fucking COVID mask there. We're doing all of their popularities shot up. Yeah. And there's this feeling in there's this truism that is like a conventional wisdom within the Democratic Party. Whenever you talk to any consultant or any political strategist within the Democratic Party, and I've done this many, many times, they always are afraid of being too out there, being too, they worry that there's going to be a misstep or whatever. And they do these things where they do these reforms, which the Biden administration did plenty, really good ones, but they don't talk about them. They're just in the shadow. They just hope, they run their course and instead of just being out there and being like, I built this fucking bridge. This fucking bridge, what FDR was doing.
Bro, the
during
freaking
the
CHIPS Act, y'all should be in we breaking ground on a new fact. This is how many jobs coming. This is how much they gonna pay your asses.
They don't do that. It's so wild. They don't do that, and so they don't sell any of their own achievements, which I think weirdly in the Biden administration were somewhat significant given the state of things and and given how putrid the Democratic Party usually is. But they just never talk about it. So no one knows what the fuck they were up to for 4 years, other than just like seeming chaotic, seeing chaos all around the world, and feeling like prices are going up. I mean, that's like the only thing that they can understand, that the government is involved in. So anything that comes next, I mean, why do we talk about the libs more than the Republicans? Because the Republicans, like, they're evil, and we know that. And like, what kind of analysis is there?
What's the
Like,
point? Like,
what's the point?
What's the point of analyzing Mitch McConnell? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, and it's we really got to get one of the two parties, and I don't know, like, there's only two parties in America, and you gotta get one of them. I don't know, and you know, it's maybe it's like a good capstone, but like a bunch of people have sent me the statement that Bernie Sanders put out.
Yeah, a
And
lot
I
of
think it's
normies
worth.
are into the Bernie statement.
Yeah,
And
and it's
Bernie,
like,
by
you
the
know,
way, shouts to him for being petty and
yeah,
taking a victory lap. Just a quick I told your asses so victory lap against the libs and the establishment Dems, and just sticking
yeah.
the knife in on those. I just appreciated it, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, the thing, I think the killer paragraph is toward the end. He says, "Will the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lessons from this disastrous campaign? Will they understand the pain and political alienation that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing? Do they have any ideas as to how we can take on the increasingly powerful oligarchy, which has so much economic and political power? Probably not." You know. And it's like, he's right. I mean, he starts off saying, you know, his opening statement is, his opening line is so funny. This is like nothing. This is just the opening statement. "It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them." And again, that is the only hope. That's the only hope for any sort of political change in this country. If you care about any sort of progress at all, and you're
You
just
got
not
to
a
speak to
frothing
the
at the
most
mouth
people
right
possible.
winger, and that is always and forever will be, under capitalism, the working class. And a politics that is not centered around working class people will never succeed. And it's was wild the Democratic Party has just completely ceded ground there when they used to be the party of the working class. And now Republicans are just kind of winning them over every election cycle. They get a little bit more. Every election cycle, they get a little bit more.
Trust me, these
And
people smell their own farts. Like, I mean, again, because I talk about my cohort all the time, but like, these are the same people, especially on the black side, man. These people will wear a shirt that says, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams." Like, these people are so self-satisfied. Like, the people that come from the meritocratic, class of folks, like, these people really think they are God's gift to the universe. I swear to God. And so it's like, I don't know that they'll ever face the music, man. Maybe a couple more losses. And and again, we got to get out of here. But like, I hate the idea that immigrants would like be like ICE would just go crazy and like be batoning people over the head. But yo, man, maybe these people need to actually see the Republicans' agenda out in the world. Man, I really do want people. I would really like. I know people are gonna say, "Oh, but actual people are gonna get hurt in the process." I know it sucks, but this is how democracy works. I would really like to see them take their agenda for a spin. Some folks might have to
yeah,
get their Social Security cut, Nando.
yeah,
Like, these
yeah,
things have to happen. In order for people to get a true understanding, man, of what these people are actually about. And we'll see how it goes from there, man. But man, woo, what an ass whooping, y'all.
yeah.
Super happy we got on. Shouts to John Gervais for keeping the trains running on time. Shouts to my man Nando Vila, man, for coming up here, giving us that beautiful analysis. And thanks for all you guys for listening. Everybody who's listening to the podcast and all the people live on the YouTube audience at the moment, man. Shouts to you guys, commentators. I see you guys. We will see you guys next week. Peace.
Later.